Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Hello and happy Monday, everyone. Welcome back into Ask Mike. And I know that we kind of had a week hiatus. It's good to see you back, Mike, feeling better. Mike had COVID and got through that. Glad you're back. And kind of tell us what your COVID experience was like, Mike.
Really strange. You know, this thing has been around, what, a little over almost 2.5 years. Everybody in my family had it. My wife, my 2 sons, my 2 daughters-in-law, my 5 grandkids. Almost everybody in the sports office had it, but you and me. We were the only 2 that didn't get it. And we talked about this. We both thought we were probably some kind of, what do they call it, naturally immune?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Because it's very odd, because we both had, yeah.
So it was really strange. So it was the weekend of the Ole Miss game, baseball, and on Sunday I had some sniffles, and I didn't think that happens sometimes. You don't get enough. If I don't get enough sleep, sometimes I'll wake up a little croupy or something. Your immune system is not working properly because you didn't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything about it, and I went through the rest all the way to Thursday with not any real bad problems, but I did wake up Thursday morning, kind of had a croupy sounding voice, and my wife said, well, I've got a home test here, I'm going to test you. And I didn't really want to do it. I didn't think it was COVID. I didn't have a fever. I didn't have a headache. Didn't have any of these typical symptoms. So she tested me, and yeah, I tested positive. So I immediately go to a clinic to make sure, and they said, yeah, you have it. And they told me you have to isolate it for at least 5 days, then test again. They gave me some medication, do all this stuff. Well, the next day, which was a Friday, from that point on, I never had any symptoms at all. I mean, I'm sitting at home twiddling my thumbs, reading books, watching old Magnum episodes on TV, you know, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, being bored out of my mind, using my smart TV to watch a Razorback men's game on my phone and a women's softball game on TV, or vice versa, and just doing stuff like that and going nutso. And during that time, I kept testing positive. I'm like, what is this? But gradually, by Wednesday, I did a test, and you could just barely see the little line. So I tried it on Friday, and yes, there's no line. So that's when I called you, so I'm coming back to work. And I was about to go nuts. Very, very mild symptoms, never was sick. A lot of people are like, oh, I hope you're okay. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, I'm fine. I've been sicker with a lot of other stuff than this. Nothing like the flu, nothing really even like a head cold, a bad one, just whatever.
I'm glad
now I've got the natural immunity.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you didn't have severe symptoms and you're back. Yeah, we did miss you, miss Mikey's face around the studio. And it also meant he had a ton of questions to answer. And so let's get right to it. We're going to start with softball. Arkansas won the SEC tournament and is a national 4 seed, hosting Oregon, Wichita State, and Princeton this weekend in Fayetteville for the regionals. So WM Hog fan says congrats to the ladies. Great year they're having. They are similar to the men's team last year, dominant pitching and a lot of bombs in that lineup. Here's to seeing them in OKC.
Yeah, that seems like, you know, maybe a real stretch, just automatically assuming you're going to Oklahoma City. But I've seen the bracket, the regional bracket, and then the possible super regional matchup, and I like what I see there. The team you probably look at, now they start off with Princeton. Princeton, come on, they just haven't played the competition Arkansas has. I'm not saying they couldn't win that game, but Arkansas should win that first game. I think they may end up playing Wichita State in the second game. Oregon is... They played a tough schedule. They played 4 ranked teams this year, got swept by 3 of them, and lost a series to the other one. So they've gotten hammered when they played ranked teams like Arkansas. Wichita State is a team that when you look at them, and I think this is what Courtney Deifel was talking about when she said, oh, it's a tough regional because of all these home run teams. Well, Wichita State is a home run team. I think they were second nationally in batting average and 3 in home runs. Well, Arkansas is like third nationally in batting and 4th in home runs or something. So they're right there together, and there's a big difference in who each team, the schedule that each team played. Plus, in this case, Arkansas has already played Wichita State in a tournament in Fayetteville early in the year, and they beat them like 7-4 or something. It was pretty convincing. So you've already beaten them. You played a tougher schedule. I'm not too worried about that. And then when you look on the other side at the supers, Washington's sitting there. Now they're, I think they're maybe, are they 18th? Something like that. They were 11th early in February when Arkansas played them twice in a tournament in Mexico, and Arkansas lost to them twice. So you go, uh-oh, already lost to these guys twice. They've kind of gone down a little bit. Arkansas has surged since then. I think it's a great super regional if it happens because it's a rematch thing. We're going to get these guys, you know. So that will be interesting. I do think after looking at all that, even though you can't totally know for sure, I do see Arkansas going to Oklahoma City, and that's exciting. I mean, it's going to be a great weekend with all of these teams coming in here, and I think the Vogel's going to be full like it's never been full before because this is a fun team to watch.
Yeah.
And the encouraging thing to me is, while they are primarily a hitting team when you look at their stats, because they're not even in top 50 in ERA, in the SEC tournament, and that's what the regionals are, it's a tournament format, they gave up 1 run in 3 games. If they continue that trend, and I said this the other day, the one way you don't get beat is if you don't give up runs. So I like their chances, and they're a fun team to watch. You don't get scared like when you watch the men's baseball team. You're not sitting there gnawing on your fingernails or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think they'll draw a big crowd, and I think it should be fun.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned this, but you know who else is in that Washington regional, Mike? Texas.
Yes, and let's say
And
they pull off.
Texas.
Let's say they pull off the upset.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they will, but if they did, and I think Texas may be ranked higher than them, so I'm not sure how that worked out. Can you imagine that if Texas came in here?
That's be wild.
I said yesterday to Courtney, you know, you probably never noticed it, but there's some trees across the street at Fayetteville High School. It may be so crowded if Texas comes in to play Arkansas that you have people in those trees.
I was going to say, that's a hill. They were mowing it today. And
they might be on top of the basketball performance center up there on the roof. I just think it's going to be fun watching all that stuff.
Yeah, Courtney and I were over there at the softball complex today, and their SID, Grace, we were talking to her, and Grace, you know, Taylor Ellsworth, who is the starting catcher for Arkansas, is a Texas transfer, and her walk-up song is All My Exes Live in Texas. I was like, that is perfect.
That would be great.
If they were to host Texas in the Super Regional, we can all dream, right? All right, next question is North Dallas 40, and he says that they're going to win it all this year.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself there, but that's a typical fan, and that's great. Here's the problem. There's so much going on in these next 2 weeks, provided they regional, super regional. That's going to be fun, and you should really absorb that now and then worry about Oklahoma City when Oklahoma City comes, because honestly, if I look ahead to Oklahoma City, you look at Oklahoma. I mean, here's the problem with them. They're number 1 in batting, number 1 in home runs, and number 1 in ERA. When you're the top-ranked team in the country in batting and pitching, you're going to be hard to beat. And if they make it, and nothing says they will, but if they make it, they're essentially playing at home. So probably whoever goes to Oklahoma City is not going to be successful against them, but you never know what will happen. But don't worry about that. That's 2 weeks down the road.
Yeah, they are the defending national champions, and they beat my alma mater a year ago, but you're absolutely right. It was a sea of OU fans out there in Oklahoma City, so that is definitely something that teams have to face if OU, or even Oklahoma State, which is a little bit further, but it is right there in their backyard. All right, Armin Abbey wants to know, how does the baseball team score 17 runs in the first 2 games and get shut out in Game 3? Is Vandy's Sunday guy better than their Friday and Saturday starters?
Well, he's not as good as the Friday starter. That kid,
David Futrell.
David Futrell had given up. He had a better ERA, and he gave up 4 runs in 5 innings to Arkansas. So you think, okay, that's their best starter, and you've roughed him up. And yet, and then the Saturday guy was fairly close, and they scored a bunch of runs on him. So how do you explain this guy? I mean, Carter Holton's ERA is 3.7. Nothing about that suggests that you're going to go 110-plus pitches, give up 2 hits, and hold Arkansas scoreless for all that time. Now, Dave Van Horn talked a lot about yesterday about, well, we wish it had been a 9-inning game. Well, maybe he would have to. You got to figure he wouldn't have pitched the 8th and 9th. Maybe you could have scored runs there and caught back up. I don't know. But the problem I see with that game is what we've seen all year long. Yes, Arkansas can hit. They can score a lot of runs in bunches. But there's the inconsistency we're talking about. You score all those runs on Saturday, and then you turn around and score some more runs on Sunday in the morning game, and then you don't do squat after that. How do you explain that? Now, people always say this. I see it post it all the time when fans argue with each other on Facebook. It's baseball. I'm tired of hearing it's baseball. Yes, it's baseball, but not over and over and over again. You are not going to convince me there's not some sort of an issue there with hitting this year. These guys, the lineup is too talented, and we've seen them in games where they're too good to be as inconsistent as they are. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's their approach to the plate. I don't know if it's all that launch angle stuff and the work they're doing in their fancy new gizmo area where they've got all the computers and stuff. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it's they don't have a Casey Opitz in there getting them fired up every day. They don't have a real team leader. I don't know what it is because I'm not over there. But they just don't show up sometimes, and that's what's got people frustrated.
Yeah, I think you're right. John Glover says, we won't win a regional. Watch Tenor win a natty. God help us. And then Keenan Harris objects to that, and he says, can't win them all. See where some are whining about how they still haven't won a national championship under their current head coach. If y'all just knew how many programs would give nearly everything they've got to have a coaching program like Arkansas has.
Yeah, I'm going to come somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. I'm going to say this first of all. I don't have any problem with fans being upset. Look, that means you've got high expectations. It means your program is where it is.
Means people care.
Alabama fans expect Alabama to win in football. They're not going to apologize for that. So they would get upset if Alabama had started off having a subpar season. So I don't have an issue with that. Also don't have an issue with fans defending their coach and saying, hey, shut up, he's good. This is what fans do. They argue. I'm kind of in the middle of all that in that I think this team to this point has underachieved, and it's disappointing. But on the other hand, I also know that in baseball, it's never over till it's over. Mm-hmm. This team could go down to Alabama and sweep, and A&M could get beat in a series, lose 2 or 3, and Arkansas is back in a good position. The thing they don't want to do is they don't want to. If they end up tied with A&M from the West, A&M has the tiebreaker. So you know what that means. Mm-hmm. You're going to go on Tennessee's side of the bracket at the SEC tournament, and that's not good. If that happens, I think Arkansas may have a tough time being a top 8 national seed, and we know what that means. That means you're at least going to go on the road to a super regional. So the easiest thing to do is to win this West thing outright. Don't be tied. You can get on the other side of the bracket with Tennessee, and maybe you can make it to the finals. If you lose to Tennessee, you lose to Tennessee. But you're going to be a host team like the softball team. Mm-hmm. You're going to be a top 8 national seed. Yeah. And then you're going to, if you win, you're going to still have a super regional at home. That's what they need to aspire to. If it doesn't happen, we've seen a couple of Dave Van Horn teams, if you go back far enough, that went on the road and still made it to Omaha.
Yeah, you go back to 2015, they were at Oklahoma State, got out of that regional, and then they actually lucked out and had to host Missouri State because Missouri State couldn't play in their home ballpark. Then they ended up going to the College World Series. So crazier things have happened.
Florida State and advanced to the College
Go
World.
to Baylor and win. So they've done it before. They've done it in a lot of different ways. So, but that is what you're striving for, is to be a national 8 seed. Right. All right, Arkansas Razorback Redneck says, what's your assessment of the Texas A&M team backing out of a midweek game with Incarnate Word? I don't know. I know that you don't care for the Aggies, but I don't get the controversy.
Yeah, I thought it was a little much. Look, here's the real issue. Arkansas is not playing midweek games now. Coaches should have enough sense not to do that. It's not good to be playing midweek games as you approach postseason because you need to save your arms. Now, look, clearly A&M wasn't afraid of losing to Incarnate Word. The problem is you play them and your RPI drops, and they're in a delicate position where they're trying to somehow get a national seed over Arkansas. And they don't want to play a game like that, and then that ends up costing them that. They might be a 10 seed instead of an 8 or whatever. So I understand why they did it. And I don't have a problem with them doing. And now what we've seen in the last few days is several other teams have now canceled their midweek games for the same reason. The real issue is they just should have. There almost should be an unwritten rule, and coaches should know that as you approach postseason play, just don't play midweek games anymore. You play them early in the season because you're trying to get better, and you're trying to pitch young guys. And we've already seen a couple of midweek pitchers now pitching out of the bullpen on the weekend. Yeah. So there's a reason to play those midweek games early in the year into the middle of the year, but as you get to the end, what's the point? Yeah. So I do think it's hilarious. the bashing of A&M is mostly coming from Longhorn morons. and I say morons because they are morons. I mean, A&M beat them in Austin. You're going to sit there and throw shade on them for not doing this and act like they're scared to play Incarnate Word when they whipped your butt in your place? Shut up. Just shut up, Longhorn fans. And so, but it is funny when Aggies and Longhorns argue with each other. And we're going to get a lot of that when they come into the league.
It does, by the way, for the record, say just shut up on our paper. So he did write that in his script.
That's what Longhorn fans should do. They should just learn to shut up.
Blood Red Hog wants to know, is it possible the Hogs could win the West and not host a regional as a top 8 seed? Why are we so low in the almighty RPI rankings? And I think I know the answer to this
Well,
one,
they're so
Mikey.
low because of this decision, which I agree with. They decided a few years ago to start playing in-state schools to help those schools.
Yeah.
It reduces their travel costs, and Arkansas still draws pretty good when they play them, and they get to play the in-state team that has all the fans and all that stuff, so it benefits everybody. Mm-hmm. It just so happened that this year virtually, well, all of them that they played were not good. Mm-hmm. So it's what we talked about before. Just by playing them, Arkansas beat the fool out of those teams. But just by playing them, their RPI remained low.
Yeah.
So that's why they're low. All this worrying about what that will do when it comes national seed time, look, here's the bottom line. If Arkansas is second, if Arkansas wins the West, they will be a top 8 national seed because that's the respect that the selection committee has for the SEC. If they're the second best team in the SEC, they're going to be a national seed. It's not going to matter what the RPI or any of that stuff. Arkansas fans need to hope that this team goes down and takes care of business this weekend, and then they got to get some help from Ole Miss. Don't like Ole Miss.
I know.
Kinda,
can you just do one thing for me?
Annoying Ole Miss fans or annoying grumpy coach that stomps out and you don't like that stuff, but you need to be Ole Miss fans this weekend.
All
They're
right,
playing better
hotty-totty.
right now. They're playing better.
Is it in Oxford?
Yes.
I like it. Okay. All right, hotty toddy, we're looking at you now here. All right, Wood wants to know what's Wood.
I know this guy, and that's why I know that.
Wood wants to know what's the deal with the athletic department making the Baum East lot a reserved lot. First, they hosed the longtime baseball ticket holders in favor of new baseball fans, and now it's parking. The Baum East lot is now half empty. What's with that? A higher donation minimum to access the restrooms? ? That's kind of funny.
Pretty funny. Look, we've gotten this question before, and my answer is always the same. You can look at it this 2 ways. You can say, hey, I was a loyal fan for 20 years. They upped the price. I can't afford it. I got moved down to the other end of the thing. That's not fair. You're not treating me right. Or I've decided I'm not going to games anymore. You can look at it that way. Or you can look at it from Hunter Yurichek's perspective, which he's a businessman, and he's trying to win in all these sports, which they are, and you need money to do that. You got to have money for facilities. You got to pay coaches. You got to do all this stuff. And he looked at baseball. Either he did or somebody that works for him looked at it and said, hey, coach, this baseball is undervalued right now. We can get more money for these tickets. I know because we got a lot of football fans and basketball fans that are now saying they want season tickets, but they can't get them because it's sold out. So they came in and said, okay, we're going to raise the price. So you can either look at that as being disloyal to these fans, or you can look at it, hey, they're just smart businessmen. Same thing with this Baum East lot. It used to be free. Somebody looked at it and said, why should we allow free parking over there? We're going to charge them for it now. So, it's like anything else. Everything's going up right now. Do I like it when you go to the grocery store and something that costs $6 4 months ago now costs $8? No, but I don't know what you do about it. So the bottom line is this year, just like this Vandy series, that place was full on Saturday. It was jammed. This wasn't one of those, they just announced the total number of tickets sold. Whatever they announced, that's who was there. So there's no sign that it's really dropping off, at least for big series. The problem is going to come if something happens to the baseball program and they're not top 5 anymore. Maybe they're just a typical top 15 team or something, sort of finish 3rd or 4th in the SEC year to year. Then if it drops off a little bit, then you might end up with tickets that are unsold. And they're taking a risk. Hunter Yurichek's taking a risk, but
just don't put that in the universe at all.
Yeah, but
Take it
what
out.
I'm saying is that's where that
know.
would go bad.
You know what's interesting? We went out and had to help put those little rally towels that you saw on all the chairs this weekend. And so we were there around 2 o'clock, and we drive in to go park where we park. And it's the first time I think my husband's ever been out there. And there was just, Hog Noxious has their tailgate. There's like one, but then that was it. And he was like, where'd all the tailgating go? And I go, well, they sold this lot. And I think that's the one thing. You're not seeing it in the crowd, but you're seeing it in the atmosphere. Of that used to be packed. There were tents. There were tailgating. And now you just have, the 3 or 4 right there. I think that's the biggest thing that's being affected.
The bad thing to me, the one bad thing about this is this has put Dave Van Horn right in the middle, because he knows a lot of those loyal fans. He knows they're upset. But what's he going to do? Tell Yurichek you're making a mistake? He's kind of stuck in the middle. He's got to live with it. Probably doesn't like it, but he understands Yurichek. You got to make money. You're the AD. He's hiring coaches. He's keeping coaches. He's building facilities. And it costs money to do that.
Yeah.
And it's silly to sit there to me and say, well, I can give up some money here. Everybody acts like it's all about money. It isn't all about money, but you got to have money if you want to stay at the top. And right now, in the 43 years that I've covered this program, there's never been a period like this where they're winning in so many sports. And that doesn't happen by accident, and you do have to run it like a business.
Yeah, you do, absolutely. All right, next question is from Parallax Pig. With NCAA proposals to lift caps on scholarships for baseball, are we to assume to comply with Title IX, schools will have to raise the equal number of scholarships in women's sports?
Yeah, I think so. Nobody said that yet, but there is a formula there. So if you add 10 more baseball scholarships, I don't think they'd necessarily add 10 more to softball. It might get spread around to the other sports. It might just be each school has a right to do whatever it wants. Okay, we're going to have 3 we've got a lacrosse team, or we've got a soccer team. We're going to give this to that to that. I don't know how that's going to work out. But here's what's interesting. There's a committee. I mentioned it a few weeks ago on this show. There is a committee currently working on this, an Ncaa committee, and they're going to come up with a recommendation about what to do about baseball. I'm pretty sure they're going to approve the hiring of an extra coach, which got turned down by vote of the member institutions, I think, a year ago. I think that's just going to be approved without a vote.
Yeah.
What's not clear right now is how many scholarships they're going to add. They're going to add some, but you're going to have a problem within the Power 5. Because believe me, there are Power 5 schools that don't make money off baseball. Yeah. So you tell them they have to add not only, let's say they say, well, you got to add 10 more baseball scholarships, but that means you got to add 10 more to your women's side. Now you're talking about 20 more scholarships. Where are they going to get the money for that? So there's going to be some negotiating going on here, and I don't know how many they're going to add. That's going to be critical. But I'm looking forward to it because I want to see Vandy with suddenly in a level playing field where they don't get all these extra scholarships just because they're a private school, and they've worked out a deal where academic scholarships become athletic scholarships.
It's kind of like Miami baseball.
Yeah, it's not right.
Same thing. Them private schools. All right, Oliver Page says, Musk keeps adding new players to the lineup for next season. At some point, does this become counterproductive?
I think it's possible. I mean, especially if he sticks with, we know that he's usually does a 7 or 8 man rotation. If you look at what he's got right now, there's 13 guys in there that are good enough to play. Do you think 13s are going to play regularly? Of course not. So what happens?
Yeah.
Who sits on the bench?
Yeah.
Here's a good thing to look at. What about Devo Davis? He's got 3 McDonald's All-Americans coming in as freshmen that are all perimeter players. He just added another perimeter player that's kind of a big guard, athletic forward type that's going to be in that mix. If that kid works out, all of a sudden you're sitting around looking at, okay, Devo, if you have a great game and then a terrible game and then another great game and then you vanish for a couple of games, and I don't care if it's Devo or anybody else, even some of these new guys, somebody to me is going to get lost in the shuffle because Musk wants consistency. So it's great that all these guys are coming in here, but if I'm one of them, I'm kind of scratching my head going, hey, wait a minute, what happens if I'm one of these guys that plays 4 minutes a game and averages 3 points? because it's going to happen to some of them. Who is it?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the math just shows you there are five starting spots on a basketball court.
And I mean, there's never been a lineup like this ever in any sport I've ever seen at this school. It's unbelievable. They don't have a single weak spot with the people they're bringing in here. So all of that is great. It's just that when you look at it, you get there's not enough time and positions out there on the court and time in a game to play all those guys. So how's this going to work out?
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how basketball goes for sure. All right, Jumpity says, according to Kevin McPherson, Jackson Robinson wanted to stay but was told to leave. Is this a bad look for Muss and the program, especially now that he has to sit out a year? I know he upgraded his position, but I definitely feel bad for the kid. Yeah,
it's something that if you're logical, you look at that and say, absolutely, you're dead on. Do you think there's going to be much traction with fans on that? No. I read Facebook every day. They are going nuts. Every time he's added another guy out of the portal, they're just going nuts. Wow, this, that. The average fan out there does not care what happened to Jackson Robinson. Ever so often, you're going to come across a fan that looks at it and says, well, wait a minute, that's not right. But it's in the scheme of things, it's just not going to amount to anything. Now, that sounds really bad. But here's what I would say. Let's look at Jackson Robinson. He came from A&M as a three-point shooter, and he had immediate eligibility. And what happened? He averaged 10 minutes of playing time and 3.5 points a game. I think he had an adjustment problem. Now, what happens if he had come here and had to sit out a year under the old rules? I think he would have been better off. This is the problem I have with the immediate eligibility rule. Everybody talks about, well, this is what we're now being fair to players because the coaches could leave whenever they wanted before, and now the players can do that too. Yes, but coaches have contracts, and if they do leave, they've got a contract issue. The players have a contract, but there are no consequences anymore. You just leave if you want to. And that may sound bad for the coaches because it's put them in a bad position, but I'll tell you who else it's bad for in many cases, the athlete. Because a lot of them hit the portal and they're not ready to go into another environment and adjust to it immediately. So what I'm saying is Jackson Robinson, if he has to sit out a year, may end up better off in the long run having sat out a year and will have more of a time to adjust to where he is than what he had this time at Arkansas. So it might not end up being a bad deal.
I think JD is a good example of that, a guy that transferred in from a university, sat out a year, and then obviously we saw JD Notae become the sixth man of the year.
And there's some, like the linebacker from Alabama that's just tearing it up this spring in football. He's an example of a guy that, he's ready to play right away, but there are a lot of them that aren't.
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes both ways. It definitely kind of is dependent on the situation. All right, Mousetown wants to know, what do you think of Jay Billis's assessment of the pushback by college coaches against unregulated NIL deals? It's like he thinks there should be no rules at all.
Billis and a lot of other guys and some fans in with him, they don't seem to understand what the Supreme Court ruling said. The Supreme Court ruling against the NCAA was this. You, the NCAA, have been making money off the name, image, and likeness of athletes. They have no say in it, and that's wrong. We're saying they have a right, once they're in a program, they have a right to control their own NIL. And the NCAA went, okay, we lost that. We have to do that now. So what happened? They sent out, they had two basic rules, and one of them was that NIL can't be tied to specific performance. We've talked about that before. But the other biggie rule was you couldn't offer these deals to people that weren't currently in your program. This is where it went nuts because there's a lot of schools, A&M, Tennessee, and others that went, oh, we can just do whatever we want because what? They listened to people that said it's the Wild West. It really wasn't the Wild West. There were rules in place. You just violated them. Now, I've ripped the NCAA for years in this job. There isn't much about them that I liked. People need to understand this. There is a change coming. They're getting rid of Mark Emmert. They're going to hire a new guy, and he's going to be given different directives. They've already got committees at work on different issues that have been in the past issues, and I like what I'm reading. Now, here's what happened on this deal. The NCAA, after all this talk about it needs to be regulated, here's what we hear from them. They're going to start enforcing that rule, that one big rule. You can't just go out and start offering deals to high school kids or kids at some other school through the portal. They have to be on scholarship at your school before you can offer them any deal. And the deal needs to come from they get an agent, just like you would if you were a pro. If you sign with the Dallas Cowboys, the Cowboys aren't going to go out and get you a bunch of endorsements. You hire a guy, your agent goes out and does that for you. So that's what you do. There's nothing about any of this that says you can just form these collectives and start throwing money at players. This is some schools trying to take advantage of something they didn't think the NCAA would enforce, and they're fixing to be in for a rude awakening because the NCAA can enforce this. And what a lot of people, especially guys that cover Tennessee, they're all defending Tennessee now. Clay Travis and those outkick the coverage guys. And one of them was on the other day, and I looked at it and he said, oh, they're going to have a hard time enforcing this because they can't do retroactive and whatever. Listen. And he said, oh, athletes, good luck on trying to punish athletes. They're not going to punish athletes. I tell you what the NCAA is going to do. They're going to come in, and if they find it and can prove that a school offered a bunch of deals to guys out of high school or pulled people out of the portal by offering them deals, they won't mess with the athletes. They'll just hit the school with probation. You got a two-year bowl ban or postseason ban. You're losing 8 scholarships over 2 years. And you know what will happen to all those athletes that they pulled in with money? They're going to split. Like rats going off a ship. They're going to some other school. So it's not going to hurt the athletes. It's going to hurt the schools. And I do believe the NCAA can enforce that. I also believe that we keep hearing about lawsuits. Okay, good luck. A&M, Tennessee, sue them. Because what happens is if that goes back to the Supreme Court Court's going to say, no, we like the NIL itself. They're allowing that now. This is a totally separate issue. This is whether you're allowed to form collectives and start throwing money at athletes. And so I think they'll win on this. And the one reason I believe this is because listen to who's now talking about it. All these coaches are jumping up, football coaches, and talking about how bad this has been. And guess who joined in on them last week? Jimbo! Jimbo, here's my great recruiting class, and boy, we have a big collective out here. And now he's going, yeah, that's a bad deal. After you know that everybody's against you on this, and they know something needs to be done, now you become a good guy. So I'm very encouraged by all this. I think they're going to get this under control. And I think my years of being angry at the NCAA are going to go away because I think they're reorganizing it and getting it to do what it should have done all along. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Interesting. All right, let's move on. STL Hog says, Pittman never signed a new contract. He was talking it up like it was really close a couple weeks ago or maybe longer, but I haven't seen anything about it being official yet. Did I miss it, perhaps?
His press conference is all about him agreeing to the contract in principle. You need to understand how these contracts work. They have basic principles, and you say, yeah, I agree to that, and then it's there. Then all the lawyers have to get in there and start doing all the technical things they do. I've seen that take 6 months in some instances. Nobody worries about that. If you agree in principle, you're going to do it. I've never seen one of these things suddenly blow up over little small details. In the case of Sam Pittman, what he basically said was, I'm now here for life. In other words, the only way I'm not coaching here is if they fire me or if I decide I don't want to coach anymore. So he's not going to go somewhere else, take another contract. This contract that he agreed to in principle has very specific raises he gets for doing this and that, and it outlines what he will do from now until he decides not to coach it. And he's not going to go back on his word. That's just not what he does. And it was when he did it, it finally explained why he did this in the first place. It made a lot of sense. If you're a Hog fan, don't worry. Sam Pittman's not going anywhere. And just because they haven't announced the final contract doesn't mean that it's not going through. It's just technical right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, L.R. Tackett says, I see where Chad Morris either quit as head coach of Allen High School or he was fired again just once after one season. Surely this is the end of his coaching career, right?
Apparently not. Just trying to read what's going on there. Now, look, this is a pretty good explanation of what happened. He didn't say it. He didn't confirm it. But people that are familiar with this situation, if you remember when Arkansas stopped paying Sam Pittman, not Sam Pittman, Brett Bielema, when they did that, why did they do it? Because they said he had accepted a job way below what he was. Part of these buyouts says that you have to prove that you've tried to gain similar employment And if a school can say you're not doing that, they can stop paying you altogether. I think that Morris knew that. Arkansas still owes him several $1 million. If he suddenly takes a job, let's say he was making $700,000 at Auburn, and he suddenly goes down to $140,000 as a high school coach, that's right on the target, man. Arkansas could come in and go, that's not trying to get a similar job. That's a high school job. We're not paying you any more what we owe you. You're trying to defraud us. So apparently he realized that. Somebody advised him on that. Okay, I got to go back up to the college level where I'm got a similar type job. The word is that he's going to end up in the North Texas area. That would be either TCU, SMU, North Texas, school like that, as an assistant coach, and that's fine. Now, as far as Arkansas fans are having a ball laughing at him, talking about how stupid he is.
They always do.
You know, personally, I've done a lot of that myself, but you reach a point where it becomes pointless. Really.
Yeah.
We all know how bad he was.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't wish him any more ill will. The way I look at this, if Arkansas had to go through 2 years of hell under him to get Sam Pittman, it's been worth it. It wasn't fun when it happened, but who cares now? So he can go wherever he wants. I got no problem with it. And if you want to make fun of him, go ahead. I'm done with it.
Yeah. What do you think this is OCC, AMS, or Occam's Razorback?
I looked at that and I had no idea.
On Hogville. Have you any idea how the SEC will be divided once the Horns and Sooners enter the league, and what that announcement might be? To me, Texas A&M and Mizzou and the last two in as former Big 12 schools should be replaced with other Big 12 schools in Texas and OU.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work, taking the last that come in and sticking them all together. I've said before, if it's a pod system, a 4-pod system, I think they're going to look at rivalries, but I also think they're going to look at how far away is your fan base from that school's fan base. And the logic would be that Arkansas would end up with Missouri, Oklahoma, and I looked around and Ole Miss makes the most sense. Those are fairly schools that are close to each other. Because when you start talking about Texas, you got to put them in with A&M. That's a rivalry. Sure. But there's a big rivalry between A&M and LSU now, and Texas and LSU.
Yeah, and they're kind of right down there.
So those three are going to have to be in the same pot, and then who's left over there? Well, it's Mississippi State. So if they do it that way, that's what's going to happen. I said before, I don't favor the pod system for this reason. You're going to end up with 3 permanent opponents, but 5 rotating opponents, and it's the rotating that I don't like. Because I don't care what school you're a fan of in the SEC, you're going to wake up one specific year and look at your schedule, and you're going to be horrified. You're suddenly going to be playing Alabama and Florida and Auburn and all these teams in addition to the teams you already play, and you're going to go, this is unfair. It's like what Arkansas had that COVID year. Well, that's going to happen a lot. I've said it before. They ought to go back to have the 2 divisions, East and West, but you only play each other. If you play crossover games, they don't count because what you're trying to do is win your division, the West or the East, and the only games that count in that are the games where everybody plays everybody, and you don't have these crossover games that are unfair. They probably won't do that, but that's what I've never liked since expansion started, the fact in the old days when I was growing up, everybody played the same teams, and it's just not fair. Yeah. And I've really come to this conclusion by watching the schedule that Arkansas has had the last 2 years. It's been ridiculous, and it just shouldn't be that way. Yeah. Everybody should play the same teams, and then you have an accurate evaluation of how good they are.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here is our final question. S. Giles wants to know, who do you despise the most, the Longhorns or the Aggies?
It's a question that doesn't have an answer.
I was about to say, I don't know if I know this answer.
Other than I just dislike them equally for different reasons. Okay, Longhorn fans, you know what bugs me most about them is they are arrogant when they have no reason to be arrogant. It's one thing if you're an Alabama football fan. You have a right to be arrogant. You're winning all the time. What does Texas do? Every year they're going to do this, they're going to do that. It's going on right now. Go look at these preseason projections. They've got Texas in the top 10 again. Where did they come up with that? Oh, we got a new quarterback. Okay, I thought you had a new quarterback last year. You had 2 of them. And, it just never seems to stop. So it's a combination of these arrogant Longhorn fans always believing they're fixing to take over. They're going to take over the SEC. And then here comes the dumb media every year and putting them back up there. And it's like they didn't. Last year didn't happen. The year before didn't happen. The year before didn't happen. The year before didn't happen. They haven't fired all these coaches because they couldn't win. And the Longhorns are just sitting up there going, dee-dee-dee-dee, we're Texas, we're good. No, you're not. So that's what bothers me about them. Aggies, they're really smart people. Most Aggies are smart people.
My uncle is an Aggie. He's really smart.
But here's the problem. It's like a cult. Honestly.
They're weirdos.
They're in a cult because they do all this stuff and it's mind control and they go to games and they're so busy doing all these crazy things that they're not really. How can you watch a game when you've got to have a little role that you play at every game? I mean, I don't want to do that if I'm watching a game. I just want to watch the game. And I don't understand allowing yourself to be a part of this collective mindset. Oh, do woo pig suey a few times in a game, it's over with. But if you sit there the whole game and you got to come up with 9 versions of woo pig suey, because Arkansas has woo pig suey, A&M has like 12 things they do. And you got to know them all because you have to go to class to learn them. And then once you get in there, everybody's, and I got to believe they criticize each other. Hey, you didn't do that right. Next week you better do better. Oh, okay. I mean, oh, give me a break. This drives me nuts.
Hey, question for you. You doing some painting? No?
What happened?
Right here. Hey, you got black stuff all over your arm.
That was over there on my desk. That looks bad, doesn't it? Yeah, something happened, and it must have got off on my arm.
I thought you were, doing some painting in the house.
No, there's a, what do you call those markers?
A Sharpie?
Sharpie. There's a Sharpie over there that got on a bunch of stuff, and I was working, and I was like,
okay. Okay, we were not done yet, but it's okay. That's our Ask Mike. Got to go answer Courtney's question now. We'll see you next week.